Hello, we're back at it
Hi.
again with another group video. I am Tori.
My name is Siri.
I'm Sophia.
I'm Azalise. So we will be discussing for this one the documentary film Exit Through the Gift Shop and the article The Aesthetics of Singularity by what's his name? Theodore?
Something
Jameson.
Jameson. Theodore was last week.
Jameson.
Jameson.
Theodore was the
yes.
last one.
Theodore was last week. All right.
Yeah.
So I am still prepping my quotes in a sense of I'm getting them with the evidence that I want to go to. So if someone else wants to start this discussion, just like steam train along. We're gonna be just talking about what was the word he used? Explicate the quote?
Yeah, I can try to start.
Okay.
So my second quote that I had is something like a realism returns to art. It is the realism of the image. However, the realism of the photograph in the so-called spectacle society, this is now second degree abstraction with a new vengeance in which only the simulacra of things can be called upon to take place and offer their appearance. Now, for some reason, this immediately reminded me, after watching the film, it reminded me of Banksy and his art. Because like the art he makes, the way it's presented, like as it mentions how it makes its presence, Banksy uses a lot of irony. Like, for example, like he writes on ads like stupid propaganda. And when looking up some of his art, I saw right below graffiti is not graffiti is illegal sign. He painted like two children reaching up. And so then I think about how Banksy probably wouldn't have been able to make his art had those previous things not existed there already. So it's self-reliant upon. And when it comes to spectacle society, it's because I think about how graffiti is very much crime, very much frowned upon, yet somehow Banksy and so many other people that somehow get away with it. I think it's safe to call those artists a society because their art can be very beautiful. And it's almost like I get that they're in a sense destroying public property, but it's still an art form and it's very interesting to see.
I agree. I love graffiti. So I think it's so interesting and just a very rich type of art. And just going into the idea, like I would say ontology behind graffiti would probably be super, super interesting because it's so like it's such a genre in and of itself, I think. So yeah, I'm very singular in its creation.
And I feel like graffiti artists, they all have a specific type of personality within them. They're like just willing to break the rules. As in the movies, Banksy says something that arts don't really have any rules. They're willing to break the rules to make something either art new or like different.
I thought it was really funny how in the film they were talking about how I think it was Banksy who was kind of one of the trailblazers for street art, and he got like stopped by a cop who was saying like you're vandalizing this, this is graffiti, and he goes, no, it's street art, like you don't get it yet. And now we're all talking about how much we love this art and fully do categorize it as an art and not just something that's illegal. Yeah, and I think it's pretty cool to see how those things come to be.
It's awesome.
So I have a quote. The quote that I wanted to bring up is the art today is generated by a single bright idea, which combining form and content can be repeated ad infinitum until the artist's name takes on a kind of content of its own. And the way that I thought of that, it brought me back to a point inside of the movie where I think Terry says like, I'm nobody. I am a nobody. I just create little art. And I was very interested in the fact of the persona of Mr. Brainwash versus this guy who wanted to be a film like create films and became a completely separate thing, and how those two personalities of himself are, I think they're just two separate types of aesthetics that have their own place in his making of art, if you get what I'm trying to say. So I just thought of that when I was watching the movie, and I was just like, it was very interesting to me to think about the persona of Mr. Brainwash, and how that has its own content and its own name and legacy aura surrounding it.
Yeah, that's also a very common thing to like have the forefront person just be a fake, like just personality that is completely different from who they really are. Sometimes it's so that they don't reveal who they are. And when I saw that near the beginning when he was making this film, and then I saw that he was putting them all away and saying, "Oh, I'm not going to make a film," I was actually disappointed. It was as though he was giving up on his dream. But in the end, he
Yeah.
found a new dream. And to me, that shows how all art can somehow link together.
Yeah, that was something that I thought of too, is the idea of no art truly is separate from another. I think, especially in the visual arts, they're visual. You have to see these things in order to be able to create this art and be like have the eye for the visual effect that you're going for. So it's like I feel like there's this intersection in every single piece of art where it's just like moving from one to the other to the other to the other. They're all their own singular beings, and they all are unique and can be kind of messed around with, and have different, specifically in like postmodern, I'd say there are different, when you have the word postmodern put against film versus put against like painting, you're going to think of two completely different outcomes, but they both involve one of the key senses in a way. I feel like I'm rambling, but you get what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
No, I know exactly what
Yeah.
you mean. My quote is
Yeah.
like right aligned with everything that you're saying.
So you want to go
Yeah,
next then?
I mean, if you insist. So mine was talking about the definition, how Jameson defined subsumption in postmodernism. He said subsumption means turning heterogeneities into homogeneities and subsuming them under abstractions, which are by definition idealisms, standardizing the multiplicity of the world and making it into that terrible thing that was to have been avoided at all costs, namely the one as such. But subsumption is not just a vice of thought; it's real. It is capital. It is capital that absorbs heterogeneities and makes them part of itself, that totalizes the world and makes it into one. So I was kind of I had a very similar takeaway from that quote, and how in postmodernism we're all a part of something bigger than ourselves, I guess. And in the way you were saying that art, there are very specific genres of visual art, but at the end of the day, it really is all part of one bigger thing. And the moment I have from the film is when we were getting a tour of this art collector, a collection of her art, and one of the paintings she points to, she said, "Here's a Keith Haring." I don't even like Keith Haring. So I thought it was kind of funny that like the specific artist's identity didn't really matter to her, and the piece itself was not something she was particularly interested in. But as an art collector, she will take in anything that falls under the general theme of artwork, or if there was like a specific kind of art that she was looking for. And I personally would never hang a piece of art on my wall that I didn't like. So I was like, I wish I had that kind of money, but also I couldn't imagine something like that.
Going off of the idea of like money with that, the capital to be able to, the capital put on art and just the ability to afford art. Like, it's like, okay, you don't like this art, someone else might love it, and you're just buying it just because you can collect it and you can hold on to it and do what with it. Like, it's like, I feel like if you're just buying it and not doing anything with it, like, you don't enjoy it, it just feels wrong. It just feels like bleh. It's like, why? You just have the privilege of owning it.
Right.
It gives me the same ick as like NFTs do. Okay, it's just icky all
Get
over.
me started. Oh, no, I'm with you there.
Mhm.
Yeah, about talking about the economic points, standard points, and the capitalism standard points of, I think my quote is alongside the second paragraph of the, is in the end of second paragraph, where he talks about how um, globalization and the capitalism kind of took over. It is, I'm not gonna read my quotes because I'm a terrible reader, but anyway, so it is such a, is in the film where this guy who makes the video, who is called, what's his name? Terry
Terry,
Ter-
just call him Terry. Terry.
and yeah, him, how he tried to mimic Banksy to do this big art, he says his art show, and he actually made, like, kind of succeeded in all different points, like succeeded through everyone come to watch it and he started making money. Is such a, in the end, Banksy just says maybe art is a joke because how heavy everything is rely on capitalism and economic standpoints. People have money can just own things that they do not even like, and just because they have money, everything, even arts, for to nowadays start become just ways to make money. And I don't know, for me that kind of de like they decrease the value of arts in general if you just using them as like a money printer.
Yeah.
And also that offend, that kind of offend a lot of real artists in the movie, where we say people, the real graffiti artists, like they said they kind of disappointed in making friends with him because it is very offensive to them, because it's like this thing we view as art, as life, you make it kind of just loses meaning. I don't know if
Yeah.
I'm making any sense because
No,
No, you
we got
are.
it.
I
You definitely
skate.
are. I
Yeah.
get so frustrated with that. I like, it's one thing, I think, for the artist to willingly try and make money off of it. It's another thing for, I think, someone just to buy it, like take it, buy it, and like resell it and do whatever the hell they want with it. I don't know. If the artist is trying to get it for their own monetary gain, like, that's their art. It's the right to own and do whatever the hell you want with your art and not have like strict rules surrounding it or guidelines or whatever. It's just kind of like, do what you want with it.
Yeah, and about postmortems, I just want to get my quotes all out there because I didn't, like, my understanding of the reading is very shallow, very on the surface, so I don't want to get in the way of anyone. So my other quotes is about how he developed the postmodernism idea in China, where he taught in Peking University. It is actually very a kind of interesting standpoint to me, because how when you start something become too mainstream, when something, when everyone is doing it, the students in art school in China are only learning about modernist arts. That's when the point, when that's the point when something, when other kind of people try to break the usual thing. mainstream thing out there and want to make something new. They want to break it so that they want to be recognized as, I don't want to be just ordinary people who only goes in the lines of everyone else. I want to stray away from the path and make something new. That is under 19 during 1985, that kind of time area in China. That is very, like, I think the point when people just cannot stand being so ordinary and for formation under like a communist ruling party. They want to do something new with it.
Yeah.
And graffiti arts are connecting to the movie. Graffiti arts are one of, in my standpoints, a very obvious way to try to break the rule, because it itself is mostly illegal. Yeah, that's my two quotes out there, and
Yeah.
someone wants to take over.
I feel like when you say how selling it removes the value, I feel like my quote kind of explains like how the value art holds before that comes into play with the selling and all that. This quote, another characteristic of the newer art and of the installation in particular, and also explains why these newer works, if we can still call them that, are at any rate no longer objects, whatever else they may be. This is my interpretation of it, is it's saying how the artwork can represent so much more than what you see on the surface. Like the person who made it, like they can be like making something from an event that was very, very near and dear to their heart. And it can also, like, so many different stories can also be interpreted from like a single painting. For example, like there's another Banksy art where there was like a broken boat on the side of a building, and he drew people inside of it and he wrote, "We're all in the same boat." I feel like that can be interpreted in a very interesting way. They interpreted it in a nice way, because graffiti is often, for whatever reason, stereotyped as such a bad thing. But when you have like a message like that, it shows you maybe to think more about the artists themselves and not what they're doing. In which selling, like you mentioned, definitely takes away from that. We're just like trying to make profit for nothing when a rich story could very easily be there.
Yeah, it's not their intention to make something that is worth a lot. Is their intention is something else, where people like me that do not really understand the arts can only see it as, wow, this is amazing, I want to own it, and the price just rocketed after that. That price is a secondary thing. It's not even a secondary, it's like a very not main elements to the art. The value of the art is only my value as equals to money. The price of the art is only what people that don't understand. We are so like stuck into just the price of it, because we don't understand anything else. I mean we, but I actually mean me. So me. I don't want you.
No.
I don't want to include anyone else, because I don't know anyone else's point of view.
I think
I
the
feel
we
the
work's
same.
still there. Yeah, sometimes I don't get art, and it's hard to. I think going into the idea of like people not setting out to create great art and just creating it, it just brings me to the idea. I love to read and I love literature, so it's like there's a lot of artists that didn't publish their work, and they got discovered after death. Like that was when their art was skyrocketed. Not just with literature, but like talk about Van Gogh,
Van Gogh.
Van Gogh, whose art was discovered after he died, and that was when he skyrocketed and became the famous, the image, the icon of Van Gogh. he wasn't putting like prices on his paintings, and if he did, they were quite low, because it's just like the capital on art these days.
Yeah, I feel like prices, as I said, I try to make myself clear, but I don't know how to speak English, so sorry about this. Prices is the element that people put on arts to make it more understandable to people that don't understand arts. If we don't understand them, how can we try our best to make people understand them? I will put the money on that, saying, well, it was worth a lot. And it's great because it's worth a lot. That's the misunderstanding, because we cannot get to that as high level as the artists are. So their mind is in the totally different level than my mind. The only thing I can interpret it is, oh, your art sells for how many $1 million? That means it's great.
Yeah.
But that's a very shallow and very like, I feel like it will be very artists sometimes will view this as not as good. They won't be proud just because their art sells for money. They are proud because the is is meaningful. It speaks their idea in a kind of way.
What you were just talking about reminded me of, it kind of ties into my second quote, but it was a quote from the movie that I typed down. Don't remember from when it is specifically, but specifically the line is said about art, capturing it is, make them live forever and ever. And it brought me back to the quote of the idea that the installation and its kindred products are made not for posterity, not even for the permanent collection, but rather for the now, and for a temporality that may be rather different than from the old modernist kind. And so it's the idea just of it being like, it exists here and now, and the idea that like the price can skyrocket randomly from this piece of art that's created. This is a human person's craft and what they have made for viewing pleasure. There's not really a price marker that you can kind of put on that. The act of hanging it up in your house and whatever, and like buying it, I think is its own like dumb little fetish that people have. So it's just kind of like, it's not, I don't think it's the intention of artists to set out with the idea that they want to sell this for millions of dollars. Is it a plus? Probably, because money. But I don't think that that's the intention for people.
That's see in the throughout the movie. I know he and our professor hates this throughout the movie, but it's actually always comes up basically every other moment with Banksy and with all the graffiti artists. We're just trying to make arts. They're just trying to make arts, and not they risk being caught to make arts, but they keep doing it. They're not for the profit. It's just for their express their mind, and all these great minds joined together can create something amazing, which we saw in the movie.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, how I feel like for me as well, like the value of an art is really not the $1 million price that Terry whatever puts on his work to get as much money as he possibly can. I really and it makes art a lot less accessible, and capitalism anyway. I'll jump into my quote because it kind of ties into this. So I have okay, we might say that just as the species called oil painting has disappeared, so also the generic universal of art itself has disintegrated, leaving in place the unclassifiable combinations we confront in an institutional space, which alone confers on them the status of art. But we must remember that with the transformation of the museum itself into a popular and mass cultural space visited by enthusiastic crowds and advertising its new exhibitions as commercial attractions, these new kinds of art objects are very far from attracting the hostility that famously greeted the older works of the modern period. And that's a big chunk of text, but basically my takeaway from that was that when I guess art museums I guess what Jameson is trying to say is that art museums in the modern era are set out to kind of show you the best of the best, and nowadays they'll tell you this is the best of the best, and we just go in and believe it, like the way that Terry was able to sell millions of dollars worth $1 million worth of $1 million of his art anyways in one night, just by advertising this is going to be an exhibition full of incredible art. People just walked in and said this is full of incredible art, and the specific moment I have is someone asked him why like the paint can occurred so many times in his art, and he said because I think it's a part of pop culture, so he just kept kind of copying and pasting it. He was just, his intention is just to make something that will be popular and that many people will like, to make as much money as he can, and just slapping the biggest number he can think of onto each work. And it's not as much a thing of going to look at art that is good. It's more of, taking what people tell you is good art and good intentions. I don't know. It's a mess. It's a mess.
It is a mess. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Everything you said just kind of spoke what I was trying to verbalize there. Very much so.
Mhm.
Agreed.
We have 6 minutes left. Yeah, I just after watching the movie, I'm just like, well, he is a businessman. He is not an artist, but he is a businessman. He knows how to sell his
that. Could it be argued though somewhat that business could be an art?
Yeah,
and
he's
the
like
act of being able to do it.
If he didn't say that his art is whatever is in the whatever he puts the garage, like, is it like a garage? I can maybe people can interpret it as the action of him trying to mimic and selling arts are his art, like his action of doing it, not the art itself. And it's kind of artsy maybe, but the entire film just Banksy tries to do his, I feel like it's just Banksy trying to be Banksy, as using irony to make something, to make us see like this person and their relationship, and what happened in the end is the wall falling when after Terry draws Life is Beautiful. That's very ironic to me.
It is very ironic,
and I think that's a good place to end this thing off.
Yeah. All right, well, I'm gonna go do some graffiti, probably, vandalize some stuff. Why not? I was gonna be a filmmaker, but then I saw someone draw a lewd drawing on the side of a school bus, and I went, you know what? This is what I want.
Graffiti.
Perfecto.
Yeah.
I'm gonna start filming every moment, every minute, every second of my life.
Woo!
Before we
Put
go,
a camera here.
GoPro on your forehead.
I want to show y'all something. I want to show y'all
Okay.
something. So the first thing I want to show you is an example of making art for yourself without any intention. This is something my abuelo drew a while ago.
Oh, I
Wow.
love that.
That is
So,
so
That's
cool.
gorgeous.
That is a Quetzal, which is a Mayan spirit guide.
That's gorgeous. I love that.
And the other thing I want to show you is this, which Humana told me not to do, but he said not through the whole thing. But look,
Mm.
Hi. Where are
I
they?
am.
we're
I
painting.
am art. I
We are
legit,
all
like
art. We've taken art to life.
what? Hold on. No, damn it! I was gonna do the girl with the pearl earring, and I was gonna do a
Oh,
little.
all right. Well,
Oh,
That would have been a
Okay,
great place to
bye.
stop. All right.
in the end,
See
come to
you
my
at the
show.
end.
Not my show.